So here's a bunch of heads from my sketchbook. It's what I like to do in faculty meetings. These are done in pencil. And let's talk about head construction. So we're going to base our head construction on Andrew Loomis. He's an American artist. Animators love him for staying on model. And you can tell his heads are a little bit idealized, but that can be super useful for us to get proportion down. On the super quick drawings, you notice I started with an egg shape for the head, but in this case for construction, we're going to start with a ball. And then the second step is to divide that ball three ways. One for the midline of the face, one for the brow line, and one for the ear line. Next, we're going to drop the midline of the face off of the ball, and then we're going to divide that midline. So we divide the midline into four parts, each part equal to half of the distance from the brow line to the top of the head. So what that gives us from the top down is the top of the head, hairline, brow, nose, and chin. Now, hairline is a little bit of an abstraction. All of our hairlines are a little different. So for construction, we're thinking of it as halfway between the top of the head and the brow line. And if all these distances are equal, we can see then we can divide the face roughly into thirds. A third from hair to brow, a third from brow to nose, and a third from nose to chin. So 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 down the front of the face. Then we're going to slice off the sides for the ear line, drop that straight down to account for the temples, and then we'll place the ear at the intersection there, which is a good idea to place the ear very early, right? We always forget about the ear. Then we start to map in the features. You notice a little 1/3 by the mouth. That's because the mouth is about a third of the way down, not quite in the middle where we tend to place it. And we're also going to add a little at back to count for the occipital bone. So that's a lot of information at once. So why don't we back it up just from having the ball blocked in and some basic marks and then build it up from there again. All right, now that we have a map, if we're gonna build in the jaw and features as it says, I'm gonna start by placing the eyes. Maybe your eyes are about one eye apart. And as your head turns down, you'll notice that, like on a can, right? If your features turn down, you know from biting a piece of bread that your mouth is curved, right? So that curve, if it faces down, that curve's gonna wrap around. That can be a tendency that can get in your way is to, when people get nervous and head drawing's difficult, if you have a features facing down like this, and then they'll draw them as though they're facing directly towards you, right? So they kind of break out of perspective, right? So the brow curves, the middle of the face curves, the mouth curves. Your eyes are about one eye apart, and I really just want to map out the features pretty simply. Right? I'm not really trying to render anything out. I just want to make a map. So the eye socket can be useful to think of too, right? Your eyebrow grows along the top orbit of your skull. When we add a little at back here, we're really accounting for the occipital bone. And so really what we have is a map where the features are just mapped out. If you get the features in the right place, you can get away with things being very simple. If you put them in the wrong place, you can sort of render forever, and it's always going to look a little bit off, a little askew. So we'll just try and fix a couple things a little bit. And there. Now, again, this isn't always I don't always start by constructing. This is meant more as a proportional review. So if we take a quick look at the skull, we can see a couple of things we're talking about with head construction, right? Here's the eye socket. Your eyebrow tends to go right along the brow ridge. Here's your nasal bone. We have a little bit of bone here where your nose goes from bone to cartilage is the bridge of your nose, maxilla mandibula. The big things are structure, right? If we turn it to the side, This is your occipital bone. Ob is on top and caput is head. That's where your skull rests on top of your spinal column. I can see that's where we add a little at back to account for that sort of sphere and plane model that we're using. And again with the sides where we shave off a little bit for the ears to account for the temples, right? So if we come back to our head drawing, we can see the things we're talking about with the skull, right? The eye socket here, the eyebrow grows right along the brow ridge. So sometimes it's almost helpful to circle it like sunglasses because that cheekbone takes light right here. The occipital bone back here, we add a little at back to that ball. Right, so that's a good proportional rough from 3/4. Let's do a profile. So let's look at one from the front. So from the front, all the same things apply. You know, it's top of the ear, brow line, bottom of the nose, bottom of the ear, and also your eyes are about one eye apart. That's important. The eyes tend to get too close together, and your head is about 5 eyes wide. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's the brow line, top of the ear, bottom of the nose, bottom of the ear. So those are some important things to remember from the front. Let's go all the way back to the beginning and do another one from a ball and do it from the side this time. So in some ways, profile is a little easier for construction. So if we start with our ball here, then the ball itself, the circle rather, would be, let's have them facing this way. So if we drop that off, now then the circle becomes the midline of the face if they're facing this way. And if we want to drop a line of brows and an ear line, right? Then we can drop this off the face here. It's easy to divide it because it's like a pie here, right? If this is the top of the head, here's the brow line, then the hairline is going to be halfway between these two. And then again, we can just count down. Hair to brow is going to be the same as brow to nose. And then again, nose to chin. I'm just estimating, but it looks pretty close. We'll kind of check it as we go along. So if I slice off the side and push it in, like we know to do, it looks the same from the profile. So I didn't forget, it just kind of looks the same. If we start to place the ear, so brow line, top of the ear, bottom of the nose, bottom of the ear, much easier to see from profile, right? It's actually one of those things, so if someone's facing up, it's kind of like wearing sunglasses, right? So if someone's wearing glasses, then the part that goes over the ear, if they're facing up, it's gonna tilt. And this point right here, right under your ear, is your mastoid process. That's like the axis for your head when it rotates, right under the ear here. So if you're drawing heads looking up and down, that would be a good spot to keep in mind. So now, as I start to build in the John features, I'm gonna remember the mouth about 1/3 of the way down, so a little above center. As I start to give them a nose and stuff, I think that nose might be a little bit high. One of the things you'll notice is that your eye, the front of your eye, is behind the back of the mouth, or roughly aligned with the back of the mouth. We tend to think of it as being in front of it, but it's actually back a little bit. It looks like I had some things off. It is continually revised. So thinking about the eye socket from the side. So from the side, of course, if your eye is a sphere and the lid opens and closes over it, then from the side, it'll be more like this, like a little pizza slice. Here's the brow line. My nose. Chin. This is a good place to look for an angle too. The lips, like I, for example, have a little bit of an overbite. So my top lip is in front of my bottom lip. Also good to look for nose to chin. But this is a good place to look for an angle, because the natural tendency is to make things the same. But if you make things the same on the body, you should double check it, because it's really rare that things are symmetrical on the body. So we add a little at back for the occipital bone again. And one of the things about the neck is that it has a little bit of a forward thrust to it, right? So it goes, by forward thrust, I mean the back of your neck is higher than the front, right? You know, if you put on a shirt backwards because the neck's high, that your shirt is made for you to be like that. So don't, if you have a neck from the side that's straight up and down, that's kind of hard to do. It'd be sort of like a balloon on a string, right? So watch for that forward thrust of the neck. One thing for the ear from the side, chin to brow is about the same distance as nose to front of the ear. So it looks like my ear could go back a little bit. That's another thing to watch out for, because the ear tends to creep forward towards the face, right? They'll tend to have the ear kind of creeping up like this. So don't, because everyone pays so much attention to the features of the face on the front, they don't get the overall proportion right. So watch out for the ear coming up too close. So again, brow to chin is equal to nose to ear, right? So B to C is equal to here to here. All right, so that's an okay head construction from the side. So let's look at a couple of old master head constructions. On the left we have Albrecht Dürer, and on the right we have Leonardo da Vinci. And notice a lot of the things that we built up in those heads based on Loomis are exactly the same in these drawings. For example, you have 1/3 from hairline to brow on both, 1/3 from brow to nose on both, and 1/3 from nose to chin on both of them. You also have the distance from brow to chin is equal to the distance from nose to the front of the ear. And finally, the front of the eye is aligned with the back of the mouth, roughly. So here are some more drawings of mine. These I'm trying to get more of a specific likeness. So I'm really using the head construction as a way of, when I start a drawing, what do I think the proportions should be on a head as a sort of a rough template. From there, I'm trying to get more specific and pay attention to where the features vary more, which is really important for trying to get a likeness. But head construction is really useful if you're intimidated by drawing the head. You should draw heads all the time. Draw them from observation, draw them from photos, construct them this way so you can make them face different directions. So I hope you review this and that it helps you get better at drawing the head, because it's one of the really fun things to draw.